I'm Hank Hine, and the Dali Museum is very honored to collaborate with the Florida Orchestra today in a discussion of a musical artistic piece that they are going to perform this coming weekend here and in Clearwater and in Tampa. As you know, and I see many of you are devotees of the Florida Orchestra is the largest, grandest orchestra in Florida. It is certainly one of the finest in our country and the most innovative. The innovation you'll see evidence of today. So I'm very honored to moderate a conversation today. We have on stage with me Geff Strik, the residential artist this year at the Florida Orchestra, Michael Francis, musical director of the Florida Orchestra, and Maximilian Hornung, the cellist. We will also hear from you and me on the piano a bit later. So let me tell you a little bit about our beautiful guests today. As you know, Michael Francis has begun his fifth season with the Florida Orchestra here in St. Petersburg. He is, in the words, I would say, of Mark Cantrell, CEO of the Florida Orchestra, the conductor St. Petersburg deserves. He is internationally acclaimed. He conducts around the world, and in the 12 or so years that he's been conducting, he has conducted major orchestras throughout the United States and throughout Europe and in Asia. The world, let us say. World-renowned indeed, and we're delighted to have him not only for his talents, but for his personality of collaboration. The Florida Orchestra has been a force in education in our community for a long time, but under Michael's term here, it has been heightened immensely, and we share that commitment to raise a new generation of people understanding, receptive, vibrant, and responsive to the arts. So he is a total delight. His family is marvelous, and they're here. His 4-year-old is not yet married, and she dances. And it's great to have his wife, Cindy, a great light in our community as well. So we welcome them heartily. Geff Strik was born in a mining community in Bourgogne.
Yep, tout à fait.
Yes.
So, I mean, right in the middle of a Burgundy field, but very closely from the mine field, where my father, grandfather, and all the family was coal miner. So it was a lifetime experience to be the first son of a coal miner, knowing that. But I don't want to make a big story about that. It's that's what build a strong temperament and character, and I don't give I would say that I do whatever I want. That's it. So
well,
so in the limit where I have a master and a conductor that tell me why I should do this. So like this I can understand. But beside that, for the past 40 years in the art life, I do whatever I want. That's my purpose. I have no.
Great freedom, and it's lovely to know that in addition to coal in Bourgogne, they have a very fine wine that's produced.
We are maybe the best, I think, yes.
Yes. Geff didn't tell this story that I heard that one day when he was quite young, his father came home from the coal mines and picked up a piece of coal, which of course is also a drawing implement, and did a drawing of a flower?
A bird.
A bird.
And yeah, because he was coming back. I make a short story. He was coming back very late at night at 11:30, and I was waiting for him every day, because you don't know if he's going to come back alive.
Oof.
Okay. So basically, every day he was reading his paper at midnight, and he was drawing with the coal. birds. And that's how I learned to draw birds. And I have this image, and I say, well, and that's kickstart a lot of how can I say that, emotion. And I decided to become when I was 9 a painter, and that's what I am now.
And now you are.
Yep, I think maybe. We decide later. We decide later. We don't decide about
You're
that.
leaving it up to the audience.
We have proof.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
The reason that Dali is involved in this, not only are we very happy to be at every opportunity partners with the Florida Orchestra, but also this work, Don Quixote, was central to Dali's interests and work. He illustrated the Cervantes text no less than 5 or 6 times during his life. The first time in the 20s, and then again in the 40s, a series of watercolors that are exquisite. In the 50s, he did a group of lithographs. And then in the 60s, he revisited the 40s images and made these very beautiful pastoral images and explored a bit of some of the work that he would do in the future, one of which was a painting called Santiago el Grande. And that painting is the largest painting of Dali's, actually, I think 1 inch larger than the hallucinogenic torrio. Is that correct? The hallucinogenic torrios are? The Discovery of America is our largest. But we're not going to envy that 1 inch. That's not the way the Dali Museum is. But this great painting is, in a sense, present in this image, the image of the great horseman and the dodecahedron of glass behind it, which is one of Dali's most celebrated works. He used really the Don Quixote as a palette to explore different imagery and to explore different techniques. In the 50s, his lithographs used some rather eccentric techniques. He used a blunderbuss filled with ink and fired it at lithographic stones. Then he took a rhino horn and filled it with French bread, another connection, and loaded that with ink, and then painted with this soft, inky material on the stones. Later, he used more conventional techniques to do the books that were reproduced photolithographically. But the other resonance with Dali and this production, which essentially involves literature, the Don Quixote by Cervantes, and the music of Richard Strauss, and an artist's response, is that he shared with Wagner the Gesamtwerk ideal of the total work of art, the totality that would include all arts synthesized in a grand movement. And those of you who have seen illustrations from Dali's Bacchanale, the backdrops in which he had hired Messine as the choreographer and the Ballet Russe to do the dancing. He did the sets, and it's exactly that synthesis, that grand ambition. So I want to read you something about the personality of Quixote as Dali saw him and why he was so fascinated. And I think it will play into a bit of perhaps the way Richard Strauss responded. Dali writes, Don Quixote encountered in the outside world the paranoid giants he carried within himself. Quixote, being a Spaniard and a realist, did not need Aladdin's lamp. It was enough for him to take an acorn between his fingers and the golden age is reborn. So he saw him as a classicist, but one full of the fantasies and the single-mindedness and the distrust of reality and the idealism of another further reality that motivates and inhabits Dali's work. So it's absolutely appropriate that we engage in this way, and thank you for thinking to involve the Dali in this discussion.
Well, of course, we remember that marvelous production that we had with the Dali and the Florida Orchestra a few seasons back, and we performed Manuel de Falla's Three-Cornered Hat. And you could see Dali's prints at the back, and the set designs, and we had the dancers and things. So I think that sense of collaboration, we're very grateful to the Dali Museum for that, and also for bringing us in here. And what we're very passionate about at the Florida Orchestra is collaboration, not just for the sake of community, but because it helps us understand the art much better when we see it from so many angles. And great works of art can be viewed through prisms of many different angles, and that allows us to understand it. And of course, with the Don Quixote, as we will discuss soon, with this art, I do think that you will leave, as Wagner planned himself, as you so wonderfully mentioned, with a far more complete understanding of the work of art, therefore your understanding of yourself and understanding of other people around. So that, of course, is the great joy of what we do. And this is Maximilian Hornung. And Max will never tell enough about himself, so I will. So Maximilian Hornung is a superbly gifted cellist from Germany. And he was, were you 21 when you got the job?
Yes,
21, he was made the solo cello of the Bayerische Rundfunk, which is the Bavarian Radio Symphony, which is the... which, along with the Berlin Philharmonic, is the finest orchestra in Germany. And then he left that to embark on a solo career. And I met Max when he was just sort of at that point of moving from being an orchestral player to becoming a soloist, and has since then had tremendous success all around the world, performing with many of the great orchestras, and so many great dates ahead. And we've done many collaborations, become good friends, but he is a phenomenal musician.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So, is it time for music?
I think this would be a wonderful time for
I gave you a big, I mean, listen, you better play well now. I mean,
Well, no pressure, right?
and please welcome Unmiko as well.
Thank you.
So while Max gets his cello, checks it's all in, it's got 4 strings on it and those kind of things. A little bit about this piece. This is the Strauss Romanze for cello, and it was written, I forgot the year it was written. He was about in his 20s. And so Strauss was born in 1864 and died in 1949. Lived an extraordinarily long life, considering the things that they went through in Germany, first part of the 20th century. And this piece was written around a time he had an affair. And the husband of the woman he had an affair with was the dedicatee of the Dvorak cello concerto, a great cellist called Hans Wiehen. And the woman was called Dora. And so they had this sort of very impassioned affair. The two of them then got divorced, but then Strauss married another woman. But they always had this very close relationship throughout their life, writing countless letters on the condition they both agreed that towards the end of their life they would burn the letters so nobody could see them. When on her stand, on her piano, she had a note saying, "To my beloved, my one and only, R." So this is sort of why this piece is written, and although, of course, rather cruelly, to be played by the husband. I mean, think. Yeah, exactly, yeah. But really, when we listen to the piece, it is very much about Strauss understanding the cello language, becoming more of a master of that wonderful baritone quality you get, the human voice you get from a string instrument, that he so effortlessly, well, not effortlessly, that he so brilliantly mastered later in Don Quixote that we will discover later.
think you were right, Michael. I think he's pretty good.
Yes. And actually, it's such a privilege when you really do hear genuinely world-class playing like that, because you can just absolutely get lost in the music, and it goes beyond just the technicality. And Max is an absolute master of his instrument. Max, what is your cello? It's a good thriller, isn't it? Yeah.
So, hi, I'm back.
Tell us about your cello.
The cello is, well, it's a bit of a special instrument because it's an old Italian made by David Tekler in Rome. But it had some cracks, and so some parts are not old. So basically, it's a combination between the old parts and very new parts.
How old are the old parts?
The old parts are about 300 years old, and the new parts like only 20 years, I guess. Yeah. And I think that combination makes it really, really special, because I discovered that if you have an old instrument that is in a perfect condition, it can be, of course, a fantastic instrument, but I experienced that mostly the instruments that are that got broken at some point and got repaired again, they sound much better. I think the perfection comes out of the imperfection, I guess. Yeah. So
well, that was a profound one. Very good.
Michael, the last strains of that, so prolonged, seem like a farewell. Does one speak of music in that way, or is that reading things into?
No, I think that's of course the great joy, and one of the complications that Strauss was involved with, is, and you just hit it perfectly there, is that can music tell a story, or is it absolutely what we hear in it? Because what Strauss is looking to do in Don Quixote is to tell programmatic pictures. It's pictorial. There's incredibly entertaining examples of the orchestra bleating as sheep. And then one of the criticisms they had at the time, and which was raging through the 19th century, especially one critic called Edward Hanslick, was Wagner's idea of music being pictorial and painting images and narratives and characters and leitmotifs. If you know, a leitmotif is where a musical theme is associated with a character. So you hear it in film all the time. In Star Wars, ba ba da da yam is the Force, and in Lord of the Rings is for the ring. So it's this idea that a character is associated with a musical theme. And on the other side was Brahms, who wrote pure music, sort of on the line of Mozart, Beethoven, that left it open for you to see what you want into it. However, tonight we have Inside the Music at the, which is our series at the Blake High School, not too far from here. And I recommend you come. It's a free event, or a pay what you can event. And I will talk through Beethoven's Eroica Symphony for the first half and explain to you that actually it's a very clear narrative. And then in the second half, we'll perform the piece for you. So you can actually understand that complication. Going back to the Strauss Romanze, I would say that is absolutely young person's music, because it's a romance, but it's not one. There is, I think you're right, there is an element of nostalgia, but so much of it, to me, when I hadn't heard it before, it was the first time I heard it, felt like you're in the throes of something illicit and dangerous, and rather physical. There's a strength and heroic, rising quality to it, but at the end there's some sort of whimsy. As you're right, we do sense that the thing is petering out as well. But Max, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about how that sense of nostalgia plays into the cello writing. Because is it a cello concerto, or is it a what is it? What is the
Romanze or the Don Quixote?
Don Quixote.
Don Quixote.
Yeah.
The Don Quixote. Well, I think it was written not as a cello concerto. It's a little bit like the Heldenleben, where you have the huge violin solo, and I think it was premiered with the principal cellist of the. It was premiered in Cologne, I guess, right, with the Gürzenich Orchestra, and their principal cellist played it in the world premiere. So it's actually considered to be played by the principal cellist, but the solo is so huge that it's basically in the last century it's played as a cello concerto. And the writing, I think the character of Don Quixote fits very, very well with the character of the cello, the sound the cello can produce, and the range. I mean, the very low register and the very high register, and the very romantic and dedicated kind of sound expression that a cello can bring out. For example, the very beginning, when Don Quixote presents himself, the cello is in a very... Huh? Should I play a little bit?
Yeah!
Yes.
Okay, but let me... Oh my God. Okay.
Conductors are always insufferable, and we don't
Yes.
care.
Well, but let me just finish. I will play. I promise. I will play. So the very when Don Quixote presents himself in the piece, which is the time when the solo cello enters the piece, it's in a very low register, and it's quite a rough thing, and so it shows this Don Quixote. It sounds like this looks. Really. You did very great. It's really amazing. It really represents the character of Don Quixote. That is, on the one hand, really powerful, and he wants to fight to save Dulcinea, and on the other hand side, you have this extremely emotional and sensitive and how can I express it? You know, this. Very deep feelings inside himself, and then on top of that you have that dilemma that he's in, because he's searching for someone who's not real, you know. And okay, I think I'll play a little bit.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, be great. Thanks.
Thank
Just,
you.
just to begin.
Thank you.
Just the beginning. Okay.
Don't worry, he knows it. I mean, but there's a lovely moment. So at the beginning, so the way the piece is structured is that it starts with a long introduction, and this is the descent of Don Quixote from the chivalry into sort of his madness. And there's a moment when the madness kicks in, and from that point on, he is, as he thinks, the knight errant and searching on a mission. And it taps into those three basic principles that all young men or boys want, which is a battle to fight, an adventure to live, and a beauty to rescue. So he's sort of tapping into that sort of eternal truism that we all want. And then, of course, he goes mad, and every time he sees something, you know the story of it, he sees windmills, and he thinks they're giants, he sees sheep, and he thinks that they are being attacked. He sees two priests with a Madonna, and he thinks they're magicians abducting. So he's completely lost as a result of all of his complications with his fantasy as a result of reading too much. But at the very end of it, then someone rescues him. So there's then 10 variations, and each one is a very entertaining and pictorial image of one of the stories. And at the very end of it then, after the battle of the Knight of the Shining Moon, who is a friend from the village who pretends to be a knight, almost knocking back into his senses, Don Quixote realizes where he's been completely hallucinating and mad and gone too far, and fantasy, and he dies. But he dies in his own self as who he is. And the ending is extremely touching. So that's the way the piece, and it's kind of a theme and variations, which is perfect for this piece. So this is, after the long introduction, the orchestra has basically snapped, and you are inside his head as all these various ideas go musically, and Don Quixote appears.
Don Quixote appears. And so on.
So, I mean, yeah. And that's this wonderful... But with that, even that sort of lifted, there's still something courtly and elegant in the writing. And then at the very end of this piece, and I think this is what the music can do even better than the book to an extent, is that music has the capacity to go into so many different narratives at once. So we go from inside his head in introduction to the personality, the physical appearance of Don Quixote, and at the very end, the cellist isn't necessarily Don Quixote dying, except for the last few bars, but he's telling the story of Don Quixote dying. So we almost go out of ourselves again to observe it. And that's why Cervantes wrote the first modern novel, because he is playing with that sense of identity, looking at Don Quixote as both a character, but actually what is the identity? They question themselves in it as well. So this is the finale, and it has the most exquisite melody that is just yearning. There's a word, sehnsüchtig, is that right?
Sehnsüchtig,
Yeah, which as we discover is the word yearning, and it's sort of perfect for this yearning for normality, but yearning to continue in that fantastical life. And it continues. It's absolutely wonderful. And at the very end, there's this most magical moment which you just feel the cello. We'll save that for the concert, of course you'll want to hear it. Is that it you just feel him dying, and it's just such a touching moment as we finish with the final army.
You want me to stay here? Is more playing?
No, you're done. Come back. Yes. Yes.
This is a cumulative work. That is, it is now in a state that is the 26th, or how many? How many how many iterations of images did you create and film to arrive at this?
So we have 47 exactly.
47.
So underneath this, there are 47 other paintings that he painted over.
So in painting, in the tradition of painting, there's often what's referred to as pentimenti, and they from the Italian word to repent, and it describes elements within a work that have somehow been occluded, covered over, changed. And so this is a huge pentimento. It carries all the former states of the painting, but he recorded each one with video.
So with the help of Stephen, that I picked to record that and documented that, because I know that it's not the most important thing in my life, but it's part of it. So these months of work and preparation didn't start 6 months ago. They start 3 years ago when I met and discussed about this project with Ella Ferguson. She's here. When I did start to work on a series of Don Quixote, and smaller, that was my preparatory work on maybe one day doing bigger work. And when Michael get the genius idea, really, thank you, Mike, to bring me on board and say, okay, we're gonna do the Schoenberg interpretation, and he proposed to me to do the Don Quixote, was one of the biggest moments in my life, because that's Don Quixote is the book, is the Bible for all of us, and has been illustrated for the 5 centuries by many artists and interpreters, and that's the base of creativity. Dalí used that, and others use that, and they bring each of them their emotion, their history, their education, and always see Don Quixote as a weak warrior. And at my interpretation, is not so weak than that. He was a warrior first, who became maybe crazy, challenging the history and the moment, what happened at this time in the 16th century. And Cervantes was a brilliant writer, and was communicating when he was in jail in North Africa with one poet that was his partner. And they communicated and debated, and how were they going to get out of this jail, because he was a slave. Cervantes was a slave, kidnapped by what we call the Turkish, but he was North African warrior that want to invade Spain. So we have so much to say about that, that if we don't know the history locally, we cannot interpret that without being guided by 500 years of interpretation done by the others. So I challenge that as as Michael challenged me and said at one point, I would like to see colors. I said, well, I paint in colors all my life, no big deal. But to balance the image and the music, my only trick was to say, okay, I want to paint in black and white. So I can paint in color, but I will show this image in black and white. So like this, it will be, turn it down, and I will not put color. But he said, no, I want color. So I want color white in the beginning.
Insufferable.
So I say, I did want to challenge him and say, well, what color you think about it? Because, but I say, okay, I'm not pushy in this way. But it was a real big work because I cannot miss the opportunity to be here. And Hank, a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, I was invited to put 3 paintings here in the ceremony behind that. And I say, well, and because I don't exhibit as most of the painter does, with the gallery, promoter, and all that, I have a couple of collectors. They call me, Jeff, what you have to sell? Okay, I sell that, bye. And I say, okay, if I put my painting in this Dali Museum, that I was feared to get in during 6 years when I moved here, because I said, Dali is here. And I see the exhibit in Beaubourg in Paris when I was 15. I say, if I bring my painting here and they don't hold the ground, I stop painting. Done. And I will make the choice to stop painting. And when I put the 2 paintings here, I said, well, they hold the ground, so I keep painting. So, and not because it's not about ego, it's about reality. When you compare your painting with a master's, it's something I suppose for a musician or composer. Compare that with the reality, okay. Or you're a fool and you keep going, or you are a realist and you stop, and you move on. So I said, I'm going to keep painting. And be here now, it's a privilege to talk with you first, and after that, having my painting here and knowing there is much more on the top, and it's an homage more than, and as you describe, go erase it and move on. And that's the hardest part that an artist can do. But if you say the concept globally, it's not in the finale or in the last picture that it's most important, it's in the process. That makes the difference between a monkey and me. You can teach anyone to paint, but knowing why he's painting, that's a big difference. That's reality. That's the difference between manierists who like to know how to paint and show how they're good to paint, and the people who want to think about painting and are able to paint. So we don't see how many hours he learned and he trained, 10,000 hours of learning and training, but he seemed completely effortless. We don't see the pain and all of that, but there is life in it. So when I paint like this, it's equivalent. What doesn't exist when I am in my studio is Michael. But without Michael, I don't exist. That's the beauty of it. So what we do all together, and it's the first time I hear Max playing for me because you are not here. And, I paint with this music blasting in my studio. And there is a relationship. And I pick his recording, because they give me that, to paint on that. And when I see the personage, the face of Don Quixote, and what he described, I was not too far off. But I challenge that because I'm not satisfied by that. So that's what he interprets. That's what he sees. That's what I see. That's what you see. So for once, we have a musician, soloist. We have a conductor, brilliant. Okay. We have a photographer, and we have a couple of artists and a videographer and editor. All artists work together like a Rubik's Cube. And so we have to find the good speed to play with that to deliver a product. And this product will change, and I know it, the industry, because it's like a museum. And I forget that really hard. It's a discussion between Hine and me. A museum, if there is no life, and I see what you bring here. You bring 3D animation and all of that, because you have to bring life. And the theater, during a concert, it's also the same thing. We have to bring life.
Yeah.
Because my hair, your hair, soon will be not anymore here. Well, how we bring a new generation like her, your daughter, back in museum, back in theater, listen all of that. If we don't do that, industry is dead. You can be a fantastic player, but you have no audience. You got to play it for yourself. So that's why I dedicate the next 20 years with Marc. I hope you will not go away.
I'm here.
All right, to create this, what I call Fortuna, because it was very hard to find. What are you doing, Jeffrey? How you call that? So I look like you did in the art history to find out the good word to name what we are doing. And that's why I said that it must be a little bit of Italian, and, you know, and it has to be bring a good fortune, luck, because that's all about that, and dollars, because without dollars it doesn't exist. So that's why today, with you on my right, all right, and Michael on my left, okay, I said that the Fortuna will be very humbly, okay, I'm very humbled by that. I think that if we keep pushing and do this kind of work, we will create a new way to bring new generation on board because they will understand.
Absolutely. Yeah, and well said, Jeff. That's terrific.
Well, I can't wait to see the realization of this.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested, because we're not seeing it today, not hearing it, I'm interested in the theory behind this. And Michael, how do you synthesize a durational art, like a symphonic piece, or an orchestral piece, with something that is not a durational art in its fundamental form, painting, it's two-dimensional, exists in a static way? How did you manage to conceive of the integration?
Well, and I think that's a very good question. And of course, art is not just the beauty of what you see, but it's the technique, it's the form, it's logistics, it's bringing something to life. And by the way, thank you very much to Phil Yost and everybody who's been hugely important in helping all this happen. So thank you, Phil. Your generosity means a lot. And so with a project like this, with the Verklärte Nacht, the Transfigured Night, did anybody see that? The Schoenberg thing we did? We'll present it again another time because it was so amazing. So this is the story of two lovers who, when they meet, she's feeling very guilty, she has a terrible secret. When they split up for a moment, she went with another man and became pregnant. And then she doesn't know how the man's going to respond, but he says, with a father's heart, I will raise the child as my own. But this is a complicated piece of music lasting half an hour for strings. So I said originally when we talked to Ella, our brilliant librarian, who's much more than that to our organization, I said, well, I think I'd like to have some art and we want to have the poetry up there. She said, I've got the right guy. And then I sort of met Jeff and we spoke about it. And then I kind of trusted, let it happen. What happened was they produced a film, a 31-minute film. So in that iteration, I needed to accompany the film. So I knew when the certain bits were, so I would speed up, slow down, and do that. So that is a way that so in the same way that if I've conducted Casablanca with live film, I have to accompany the film. I once did The Wizard of Oz. Never again. Those munchkins have the worst rhythm ever. So, and don't even get me started on the Tin Man's tap dancing. Forget it. So you accompany that way around. But that wouldn't work when we have a soloist, because I can't ask Max to speed him up, slow him down. So what we've created for this is a different process, and working with Kenny and other people here as well. And that is that we create a series of shorter sections that have room, so that if we choose to go slower or faster, when we're capricious musicians, we're allowed, that the film will bend to us and fit to us. So now it'll be something much more fluid and can now be transported for other conductors and orchestras to do. Because not many conductors will want to accompany a film. Even though as compelling as it is, this is much more successful. And of course, we haven't seen it yet. I'll see it tomorrow morning for the first time fully. But what we've also spoken a lot about is the structure of the piece. So one of the ideas we had was that he's black and white until he goes mad, and then he's in color, and at the ending, then he's black and white again. So it is Wizard of Oz-esque in that sense, but it's that idea of using color to express the different various shades of what we do. And because you're so brilliant at it, and because you're such a master of so many styles, that's what you bring, is that you have such an incredible ability to paint in so many ways with the hand and the guidance of so many great masters, but yet you bring it into a modern life. Because you learn, because you studied with great skill.
Yeah.
It's not just for you, it wasn't just a hobby, it is a genuine craft.
It's the interpretation. Yeah, you are right, completely. It's not because I'm good or not. I don't want to say that. Is that at one point you have to digest the masters, eat them, take the best of what they have, and after you bring something personal. That's make the difference. And that's where life is. That's what you put your signature and your name on something. It's because you interpret and do better. Picasso was saying that he's a burglar. He's still the idea from something, but try to make it better. And so what I do try to be is to pick the best technique of each masters that I can find, and take the best technique for what I want to apply. And it's very mathematical and simple. And after, there is moment that I don't control. And Steve was here to monitor that, to record that, and say, wow, that's what I need. And that's what the beauty of it is, what you don't control anymore, and you paint by instinct. That's where your real personality get in. It's not calculated. The painting and the material take over. Or you paint on the flow, or you bring the painting that is on the flow and you put on the... So there is a lot of recipe. And a good painter believes that has a good recipe for the right image that and emotion that he wants to pass. But for this one, yes, it take my energy out completely, because
it's a huge project. 47 paintings.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say that the way that Geoff paints them, when I've seen it, but I haven't seen you in the studio, but having spoken to you, it's almost like the Stanislavski method of acting we see in Daniel Day-Lewis or in Robert De Niro did at the beginning as well, where that idea that you become the character. And I mean, dare I say, your moustache and Don Quixote. I mean,
No.
just saying, just saying.
No, it was a joke in the beginning, because it was not really a joke, because I say, okay, if I paint like so much and fast, I cannot stay focused on the detail. But I have to impersonating that. And my first idea was to paint who was Don Quixote, of course, but to become Don Quixote as a crazy man, painting himself, like he did in the story. He has a discussion with himself, and there was this mirror that I have to paint, because Cervantes described the mirror. So I said, all right, I'm going to let it go, and I'm going to be able to record my face and all of that. And I asked Steve to bring this image in. And when we showed the first image a couple of days ago, I said, toss me out, remove me, because that's not about me. It's about Cervantes, Don Quixote, and the music, period, and Strauss. Because Strauss cannot illustrate a book of 600 pages in 40-something minutes. So he picked whatever he wants to show at this point. So it's not about me, it's about, we see me painting a little bit. I don't give any solution, but there is part of it, not so much in the beginning. So we have the past 4 days working at our best to remove most of what my appearance can interfere with the personage of Don Quixote. So this will be cut down. And it's only for me to keep and stay focused. Every morning when I wake up, I say, oh, yeah, he's Don Quixote. So
who's Sandro Panza? This is the question.
I have one. I have one. His name is Vinny. He's my bodyguard at the Central Cigar on Central Avenue. And he fit the personage. Yes.
Very good. But you know, what's interesting is that what we're doing here is not being done by any other orchestra in the world. This is something, it is something unique. And that is something which is coming. Max, you've played this piece many times. Have you ever been involved in a project like this?
Of course not.
I mean, that's the thing. So there's something extraordinary about seeing, I mean, even though this has already been created, with the use of video, it comes alive again because you're watching the process happen, unfold in front of you. As, of course, music is entirely temporal. Once it's gone, that very second it never comes back. Why? Because you've changed and the environment's changed. So it just happens there. That's the power and beauty of live music, is you're watching risk, you're watching things happen once, and it cannot be replicated. It can be close, but it will never be the same because we ourselves are different every time. And I think what for Hank, for you as an artist and as a literary expert and things, for what is the significance of Don Quixote as a book upon history, and what do you think has been the most important influence of it upon other artists and just its legacy?
Great question. I think you made a lovely description of why Don Quixote is called the first novel, because of the self-awareness of Quixote. It's not just a presentation of a personality. It's a personality becomes aware of itself. And that, of course, is, to use your coinage there, that's what separates human beings, we think, from monkeys, although they may have self-awareness. But that sense, we're most alive when we're aware of being most alive. And that self-awareness, I think, is what makes it a modern work, and why it is so compelling and interesting.
Yeah, and I think what's fascinating is when we think about, I mean, the two great giants of the time, Shakespeare and Cervantes, they both were able to look at themselves and outside the frame in a sort of Brechtian way at the same time. But then also when we see when Strauss wrote this piece in 1897, the growth in modernism at the time, the thinking, Darwin, Freud, Jung, I mean, the whole world just exploded out. It's like it was another just tremendous golden age of intellectual thinking and modernism in the way that we've never really haven't seen since. And so this piece is so subtle in the way that it goes from the cellist is the narrator, but it's an unreliable narrator. And that's the brilliance of it. You want to trust everything he says, you want him to succeed, but you know that he's completely bonkers. And so that means that the finale is one of the most exquisite, touching, heart-rendering pieces of music, because it is that moment of self-awareness, that moment of farewell, but it's that moment of longing to still have it. And there's a great thing that he says, and where he challenges us the most, I think, Cervantes, is this line, "Too much sanity may be madness, and maddest of all is to see life as it is, and not as it should be." And that's really, of course, what great art is about, is being that lamp to show us what it can be, but that mirror for us to understand ourselves. And why Cervantes has survived so long as the great novel is because of that. And this piece, Richard Strauss, he wrote when he was 34, shows the most remarkable psychological understanding of that human condition of yearning for the adventure, but equally understanding the fallibility of it. There's tremendous humor in it, tremendous moments of beauty and just heartbreak. But the piece on its own is a glorious work of art, but combined with what we're about to see, and I'm looking forward to seeing it tomorrow myself. Although, of course, I've seen many of the images, to see it all in one thing, it will just be such a compelling example of art at its finest, taking a great work of art, a novel, bring it to life through music, through live performance, with art, with videography. This is keeping Cervantes alive today in an absolutely fascinating way, the fact we're discussing it here. So I find it the most compelling collaboration, and we're excited that we are the first orchestra, I believe, to have a visual artist in residence. And that will continue. We really have some great projects ahead of us. And it's good for you. You say you work so hard that you always end up losing about 20 pounds of weight.
Yes, but also because Mark Cantrell, the CEO, told me that if I do the next one, the Alpine, Strauss, I can go to France and paint. So that's my objective. That's my only objective, go back to France in vacation and paint. So, it's, sometimes we are lucky, and I didn't know why I moved to America 20 years. Well, I didn't know why, but the 21 years that I spent here has been a success, but the last past 6 months have been did prove that inside in America, everything can happen, everything. And I believe that we're just starting something here, and we just have to push it. So we have to collaborate more, all of us. And well, I'm ready to paint more. I'm ready to go see. And yes, so we will do something cool here. I believe so. I believe so.
Jeffrey, that's a lovely note for us, I think, to close. And let's express our appreciation for the boldness of the Florida Orchestra in doing this.